we go. Done. All right. Now you guys should be able to hear me. Sorry about that. We had my microphone was muted. Sorry about that real quick. So once again, welcome back to episode 7 of Vertcoin Talk. This is the first episode where we got to have James Lovejoy, our lead developer, on for Vertcoin. We're going to be hitting up the AMD Miner, talking about the road that we went down in order to get that to the community. We're also going to be talking about Gertjap's event that he has coming up here in a few days, and we'll be touching on the Vertcoin Hot Sauce that ended up selling out during the pre-order. So James, thank you for joining me, and let's get right into the AMD Miner. So as you guys know, we have released the AMD Miner on our Reddit page. So we went over some of the numbers that we're getting with these different cards. Eric did a lot of testing about this, which is Etang. He's one of our developers. But James, give us the kind of roadmap of how we got to this point and the road of getting this AMD Miner out to all of our community.
Yeah, it all started a year ago now, I would say, when it sort of came to pass that the Nvidia miner was way more powerful than the AMD miner that was available at the time. So whilst you could mine Lyra2RE on your AMD card, you couldn't do it competitively with your Nvidia counterparts. So it was decided that a new AMD miner needed to be developed. Unfortunately, in the interim time between when we developed our miners for Lyra2RE and now, there's a lot more money in this space. And so the cost of the developers who know how to do this has increased dramatically. And it seems that the number of people who know how to do it hasn't actually increased to meet that extra demand. So as a result, we had to raise a bounty that we could offer to someone. Unfortunately, it transpired that that bounty was quite low in the grand scheme of things. And in order to hire someone to actually develop the miner, it would have taken significantly more funds. So what ended up happening instead is we brought a new member onto the development team. We're working with other miner developers in the community to try and bring him up to speed on miner development in the hope that he could use his skills in hardware development and verification to build an AMD miner for Vertcoin. But in that time, and this took almost a year up till now, but in that time, another individual came forward with a miner that they had developed, which was significantly faster and met our requirements for bounty payout. So we were able to release their version of the miner and pay them the bounty.
Yep. So now you guys can see that is why we have the, I believe it is, what's the name of the new miner? Is the
Lysol miner. So
yeah.
This is Ly from Lyra, CL from OpenCL, which is the programming language you use to write mining algorithms for AMD cards. Miner, well, it's a miner.
Yeah, so you can see here on the GitHub, this is the gentleman who developed the miner. This is where you can go and download it. It is all open source, so you can review the code. I know our team has looked through the code to make sure everything was on the up and up, and so far we've gotten some pretty impressive numbers out of the AMD miner. I know Eric had released, kind of numbers that were a little bit better than the Nvidia counterpart. So one example, the Vega 64, it's getting about 75 megahash versus the 1080 Ti, which is getting about, 70 megahash?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically speaking, AMD ought to be faster, but they don't make life easy for developers. The biggest problem by far was that their developer tools on the AMD side are far worse than the Nvidia developer tools. And so although it should have been, a relatively easy task, it actually ends up being quite difficult because you have to write the miner in raw assembly machine code language in order to get any performance out of the cards themselves, which is not something you typically have to do on Nvidia.
Okay. So now what was one of the biggest challenges in developing the AMD miner?
Yeah, the biggest challenge is finding the right people, right? The personnel, it isn't available for the price that we are able to pay. So that was by far the biggest challenge, definitely. And as you can see, it took over a year for someone to come forward with a working product that met the bounty criteria. If we could have developed it in-house with something as performant as we required, then that would have been great. But unfortunately, it's just a massive barrier to entry to develop these miners.
Yeah, and I know one of the big things for this, people were complaining, oh, it's taking so long. We've raised the money. Why isn't it out yet? And something that our project is very keen on is making sure that we put out quality products. So that's kind of we had the bar set pretty high for performance from the application. So that's why we had to do, even whenever NextMiner was being developed, there was a complete rewrite of the kernel, right? In order to increase performance, because we wanted to make sure whatever product we gave you guys in order to mine on AMD, we wanted it to be the best product available. And that's kind of where we're at. And that's one of the contributing factors to it taking over a year, right?
Yeah, I mean, the criteria for paying out the bounty from us was that it needed to at least match the performance of MKX Miner, which is a closed source proprietary AMD miner for Lyra2RE. Now, obviously, users could have used that for some time, but it has stability issues, it has a developer fee, and then also there's this issue of it being proprietary, so you can't analyze the code and see whether it's secure or stealing coins from your computer or any of these kinds of things. So. But at the same time, it's not really worth releasing a miner that is marginally better than the existing miner. It needs to at least match or outpace the miner that's available for people. So that's why there was the delay. And ultimately, optimizing algorithms, it's not an exact science. It's not like there is a pathway to optimize this algorithm and you can know it ahead of time very easily. It's more like you try and make incremental improvements until you reach a point that it's fast enough. It could have been that it just wasn't possible for AMD cards to mine as fast as Nvidia cards. Now, it transpires that isn't the case, but it's entirely within the realm of possibility that you could keep developing the algorithm forever and never actually get it to be faster.
So one of the things that we are keen on is making sure that all of our stuff is open source. So you had talked about how there was a competitive AMD miner, but it was closed source. What sort of negative impacts could be had, I guess, by mining with a closed source product that you can't actually review the code and make sure everything's on the up and up?
Yeah, I mean, in this space, when you're dealing with private keys and funds where, if you lose your private keys, then the attacker can steal all of your money and you have no recourse to get your funds back. It's really important to ensure that your private keys are secure so that no one else can see them. And if you're running unsecured code on your system where you can't analyze what is actually in that code, then there's no reason why just by running the software on your computer, it can't analyze the files on your disk to read the private keys off and send them to whoever wrote the software in the first place. And it would be very hard without going into the code, analyzing the machine code to figure out whether this is actually happening or not, which is out of the realm of the vast majority of users, obviously. So, you need to think really hard if you're storing cryptocurrency wallets on your computer about, what software am I running? Do I know what the software is doing, where the code has come from? Because if you don't, then the level of confidence you can have about the security of your private keys is unfortunately quite low.
And that's the thing. Everybody's going to have confidence in the product until something bad happens. Right. With it being open source, you trust, but you verify. You make sure that what you're installing on your computer, using your electricity in order to mine, is actually doing what it says to do. Because it's kind of like in the Office Space movie where they go and they take the money that's rounded off as cents. There could be a miner that's doing that same thing to your computing power, and you're not getting the true value or what's advertised to you from the miner. So making sure it's open source is key whenever you're using any sort of miner, regardless of what coin you're mining.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be that you go and directly analyze the code, but by the nature of the fact that it's open source, there will be a group of people that have looked through the code and analyzed it to an extent. And those people would, we hope, tell the community if there was something untoward there. At least I would do that if there was. So on that basis, you can have a higher level of confidence that your funds are safe.
Yeah, the more independent eyes that are able to review the code, the more likelihood that any sort of malicious intent would be stopped and or exposed and whistleblowed. And that would, cause people, I mean, there still may be some people who aren't paying attention that may still use the miner, but the overwhelming majority of people would know about the exploit and be able to protect themselves and protect their computing power.
Certainly.
So, the AMD miner works on all AMD cards, right?
It runs on all AMD cards that use the graphics core Next architecture. So I think these are everything from the Nvidia 7000 series and newer.
Okay.
But I mean, that's the cards from the last sort of 5 or 6 years at least. So
yeah,
certainly.
and you know, cards that are kind of older than that, you don't really get a return on your value of electricity versus, you know, your mining power. But every relevant, current, up to date, at least a few years old AMD card will be able to use this miner and to be able
So,
to successfully mine our algorithm.
yeah, and the thing is in order to get performance, again, you have to write a different kernel for each of the different graphics architectures. So there is sort of a limit somewhere where you have to stop and say, okay, well, these are the set of cards we're going to support, and below that, then you're going to stop support.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, where this miner works is the vast majority of modern cards that it would be worth mining on anyway.
And you know, this does bring in a large group of miners who they weren't really able to mine our algorithm just because of I mean, you could mine the algorithm, it just was not efficient, and that's what this tool allows them to efficiently mine, just like the users who have Nvidia cards.
Yeah, it brings them to parity, if not a little bit further ahead of where Nvidia is now.
Yeah. So will the AMD miner ever be integrated into the OneClick miner?
Certainly, yep. That's next up on the roadmap, I would say.
Yeah, so that will make it, right now it's not, I guess, as one-click friendly to be able to get the miner up and running. There is a step-by-step process in order to get the miner going. I do believe that is documented here on the GitHub. Down towards the bottom, you have Linux instructions and then you have Windows instructions. So it's not as easy as with the one-click miner, but it is our goal to get that integrated in, so it will be just as easy for anybody who is completely computer illiterate to be able to just get right and going and mining with their AMD card.
Most definitely. Yep. Joe is working on that as we speak.
Is he? Okay, that's good. Now, I know we don't like to give timelines, but any timeline we could tease the community with, you know, when we may be able to see that integrated into one-click miner?
I wouldn't want to presume. It's up to Joe and when he can find time to do it. I mean, we'll all sort of work at it, but I can't imagine it will take very long. It's merely a case of putting the correct wrappers around the miner and getting it integrated rather than developing a whole new mining algorithm, which is a different order of magnitude.
Yeah, so guys, look for that. Make sure to stay to pay attention to our social sites and stuff. We will make sure to release and announce that once that gets integrated into one-click miner. Will the AMD miner take a developer fee? Because I know we've seen some other Vert miners and things of that nature that we have developed for our algorithm in the past. Is there any fee associated with using this AMD miner?
No, there isn't.
Okay.
No fee. And additionally, the software is free software, so you could take it and make your own without a developer fee, even if there were one. But in this case, there isn't, so it's not something to worry about.
Okay, awesome. And now, so is there any future vision of taking this AMD miner, I guess, to the next level outside of the one-click miner? Do we have any future ideas to use with it? Anything like that?
Well, I think sort of Lyra2RE as a mining algorithm is coming to the end of its life, really. We've seen various attacks going on Verge and other networks and what have you. And if you look at the Crypto 51 app, you see that there's a lot of hash power available on that algorithm and on other algorithms. So it's we need to move to something else moving into the future. So I think the development will be on a new algorithm that's able to defeat challenges like nice hash and 51% attacks, rather than focusing on new applications for the Lyra2RE Nvidia miner even.
Okay, so guys, if you want to see a Vertcoin Talk specifically on possibly the new algorithm that we may be working on, let us know in the comments section. Shoot us a message on Twitter or in Discord, and maybe we can dedicate an entire Vertcoin Talk into going behind the processes of creating an algorithm and kind of what we're looking to do for a possible future algorithm for the Vertcoin community. So let's see. Let's see. So to get started with mining with this miner, you simply download it from the GitHub and then follow the instructions. Is there anything special about this miner that is kind of different from other miners that are on the market?
I guess it's a little bit different from what people might be used to. So if you've used CC Miner or SG Miner already, the syntax to launch it is a little bit different. So in this case, there's a two-step process where you first generate a config file and then populate that config file with your pool information, and then run the miner. Whereas in CC Miner and SG Miner, you specify those things on the command line when you launch it.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different in that sense, but not anything that people shouldn't be able to figure out from reading the README.
Cool. Yeah. So I think also we have people who are kind of dedicated to tech support with that in our Discord under the miner section. So if you have any questions, if you run into any problems, jump into our Discord and we'll be able to help you kind of troubleshoot and get you started mining Vertcoin, as soon as possible. So if I have an AMD graphics card in my iMac or Mac Pro, will I be able to mine? And if so, how?
Yeah, unfortunately not. So the miner doesn't support Mac at this point, Mac OS. I'm not entirely sure what it would take to make it work on a Mac, or if that's even possible, but at least right now it's not. And certainly I'm unaware of any product that Apple sells right now that actually lets you expand with your own graphics card, because I think they cancelled the big monolith Mac that they had, which let you do that.
Oh, okay. So Mac, still being kind of restrictive when it comes to crypto and being,
Yeah, I mean, certainly if you have Mac hardware and you really want to mine, what you can do is dual boot Windows on your device or Linux, and then most certainly you can mine on that hardware. But it's just the Mac OS operating system in this case that's the problem. So
okay.
Yeah, if you have Mac hardware and you're willing to dual boot, then most definitely you can mine on it in the same way as you would on any other Windows or Linux device.
Cool. So I guess one of the last questions that I have here is, and we kind of answered this a little bit earlier, but why has the Vertcoin team spent so much time on the AMD miner, and what does Vertcoin see as the value of this project?
Well, ultimately, our main sort of selling point that we say to people is it's about decentralization, democratization of the mining network, distribution of fees and power and what have you. And if it's the case that there's only one hardware manufacturer with which you can mine, then that's a serious problem, because that's the problem Bitcoin has, right? They have one hardware manufacturer. And we're lucky in the GPU space in that there's two hardware manufacturers that actually have competitive products, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
But until now, we haven't actually had a competitive software package which allows you to utilize that. So it's really important in the sense that this brings more competition to the market. It means you're not locked into one manufacturer, which hopefully reduces some of the poor incentives in the system to do nefarious things or try and capture people and what have you.
I know that was one of the critiques whenever we had done a lot of articles and not necessarily bashing, but bringing educational awareness to the problems that come from ASICs, and specifically them being basically monopolized by a single entity. A lot of the critiques that we had was, well, you're only an Nvidia, project. You can't really mine it with AMD, and we have put a lot of time and effort and resources behind being able to fix that and to really commit to our vision and our ideology of, look, we want everybody to be able to mine. If you have a computer, regardless of video card, you'll be able to mine our platform. And I think with this release of the AMD Miner, we've gotten one step closer to that. I think once we get it implemented and wrapped inside of the OneClick miner, we'll be even closer to being able to truly see that vision to light.
Certainly.
So I wanted to take a quick break real quick and see if anybody had any questions in the YouTube chat about the AMD Miner. Any question? Have any of you guys ran the AMD Miner? What type of performance are you seeing from this? Let us know if you have any questions regarding this miner, or if you have a question for James about anything. Let's see. We have we had one here about any miner for the Mac OS X, or I guess OS 10, and if it's actually, and if it's not being considered. We kind of already touched on that regarding the Mac section. One person said, Andreas Antonopoulos says that ASIC resistance is futile. Do you want to respond to that? And I guess it's not necessarily, I guess it kind of works with this.
Yeah, I mean, he's entitled to his opinion. I mean, I think it's sort of a bit of a logical fallacy to say that like ASIC resistance is impossible, because resistance means you resist something. So it doesn't mean you stop it completely, or you're like, ASIC proof. That's a different thing entirely. But it's certainly possible to take active steps to reduce the benefit that ASICs might bring beyond GPUs or CPUs. So whether or not it's futile to even bother to do this, I don't think that's the case. I mean, ultimately, it's not miners that decide how the network works, it's the people who use it. You know, the miners don't necessarily bring value by themselves. It's ultimately the use cases and the people who hold the coins and spend them, and promote the coin and what have you. So if it's the case that everyone within the project agrees that ASICs are a bad thing, that we should try to avoid and we should have a more distributed network that's more accessible, then the miners will just have to accept that's the case, because if they try and say, no, we're going to have an ASIC version of this coin, then sort of the value proposition of it really goes away. So yeah, saying it's futile, I don't think is really accurate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that statement completely. One of the other questions we had here was, will there be a new miner for Nvidia?
It's possible, yeah. We'll have to look into some of the optimizations that were made for the AMD miner and see if any of them can be backported to the CUDA version of the miner, which is what's used on Nvidia. And equally, there are some optimizations that Alex made in his version of the miner that may be applicable to this new AMD miner. So it may even be possible that there's more performance to be squeezed out of the current AMD miner. But as I say, I think going forward, the development focus for us is going to be on a new algorithm which tries to deal with some of these more external issues beyond the competition between different types of card.
And I would imagine with us developing a new algorithm, we're also going to make sure that AMD and NVIDIA will be able to mine that new algorithm using the tools that we currently have, right? Or are we going to be able to make tweaks to those?
Yeah, I mean, it would involve creating new miners, but because it's a new algorithm that would be bespoke, i.e. not an algorithm that already exists on the market, they'd be starting off sort of from a level playing field. The problem we had with Lyra is, lots of other coins use it now, and it's been in the wild for a couple of years, so people have had lots of time to make various tweaks to it and analyze it and so on. So what really happened is, when they launched, AMD and Nvidia were roughly the same, and our miners were competitive, but over time, because Nvidia's developer tools are that much better and it's much easier to work with, the Nvidia miner has outpaced the development of the AMD miner. And it was only once, significant resources were put forward to compel someone to put the serious effort in that's required to actually make the AMD miner efficient that was able to happen.
Yeah, and I want to take this opportunity to thank the entire community for contributing, voluntarily donating to that fund in order to make this happen. If it wasn't for you guys, then this would not have been possible. So we definitely want to thank you guys for being so generous with your donations. I know that goes not only just for the AMD miner, but every aspect of our project. Our project is completely donation driven. We did not have a pre-mine. We didn't have an ICO or anything like that. All of our volunteers or all of our devs and marketing team, everybody who's associated with the project are volunteers. So all of the donations that come into the project, they go directly towards the cause that it was designed to whenever you gave a donation. We saw somebody here said, well, now that we spent the AMD bounty, what about the exchange bounty?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we're actively working on, but ultimately, just like all of these things, we need to get value for money for people's donations, right? Like, we could have given the bounty to Alex and gotten a miner that was slower than MKX but open source, but we didn't think that was value for money or something that people would ultimately accept. And similarly with the exchange fund, yes, we could give the money right now to an exchange that doesn't have that much volume, but I think what people are expecting from that bounty is an exchange that would bring value for money, because 10,000 Vertcoins is, at least to me, a non-trivial amount of money. So
yeah, exactly.
It's important to, I think, hold out until there's something that I think everyone in the community would get on board with if that was announced that was the thing we were spending the money on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not the case that we're just sort of sitting on it and not doing anything. It's more the case that the right offer hasn't come along yet, and we would rather not spend the money on something worse than hold out until something good comes along.
Yeah, and unfortunately, even when it comes to software development or any of these decisions of spending the money that has been donated to us, we take return on investment very seriously, because at the end of the day, it's not our money, it's the community's money. So when we're looking at exchanges, when we're looking at applications like this for the AMD miner, we want the best performance for the value. So we want to make sure that what we're spending our money on is we get an appropriate return on that. Let's see. We'll come back to Q&A. We'll give some time for people to put in some questions here. But we had I know the main focus of this talk was going to be the AMD Miner, but I did want to highlight that Gertjap is going to be speaking in a few days, actually June 30th. He's going to be speaking at the Off the Chain conference over in Berlin. If you're near there, if you have time to stop by, he's going to be talking about discrete log contracts, and he's actually going to be doing this on behalf of DCI, which, as most of you guys know, James works at the DCI as well. James, do you want to comment maybe a little bit, kind of give a preview of what he's going to be speaking about over there at the conference?
Yeah, so this is something that Gertjap actually talked about a bit at the Layer2 conference that we had here that the DCI ran. But essentially what it is a system which allows you to use Lightning Network channels to perform derivatives contracts. So if you want to bet on some external input, like the weather or the price of an asset or some other, anything where there is a discrete number of predetermined outcomes, you can have a trustless bet with a counterparty on that, which is quite powerful when you think about it. Moving forward, we're sort of trying to work through the various functions of the financial system and think through which ones we can replace in software so that we can have a more complete package to offer people in terms of a future financial system.
Yeah, and that's a DCI initiative. It's not necessarily a Vertcoin initiative, but it is good to know that our developers are not working just on Vertcoin, but they're working in the crypto space in general and trying to make everything more user friendly for being able to use crypto in everyday life. Like I said, his talk is going to be 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. on June the 30th. So if you have the ability to stop by there and see him, get in there and check it out. One of the other things that I wanted to touch on real quick, we had talked in the last Vertcoin talk that we had a pre-order going on for the PepperX or Pepix Pepper. Sorry, I stumble over that from time to time. The Vertcoin Verde Hot Sauce, it's sold out. So we completely sold out of the hot sauce. We want to thank everybody for joining in on that. Let us know how the hot sauce tastes. Take photos of it, tag us in it, spread it around and let your friends know what Vertcoin is by using this kind of unique little marketing tool to be able to kind of introduce people into Vertcoin by just putting some hot sauce down on the table. And Eric and a bunch of us are taco enthusiasts, so you gotta, if you can put this on a taco, take a photo of it and then send it over to us. Let's see, I think that's about all the topics we had scheduled for today. Let's go back and see if we have any other questions. So let's see, is there a place where we can see all of the companies that accept Vertcoin? So actually there is. If you go to the Vertcoin website, so let me go vertcoin.org. Right at the top of the website, you're going to see a thing that says merchants. If you click that, you can see all of the different types of organizations that accept Vertcoin as payment. We do a thing called Merchant Mondays, where we highlight companies and we add companies that have been brought to our attention over the last week, companies that accept Vertcoin as payment. So come down here to vertcoin.org/merchants, and you can be able to see anybody who will accept Vertcoin as payment. I know from our standpoint, we want to continue to grow this list, and eventually we want to be able to offer a point of sale solution that is so easy to use that every store will be able to accept Vertcoin as payment. Let's see, what other questions do we have here? It says you guys need to update the website with the new AMD miner. Yes, so we are going to be updating the website. We have a complete skin that we're going to be putting up there to highlight the AMD project, and then also to make it so that people can click on the website and go right down to the Miner Github and to be able to download that. Let's see, any chance Vertcoin could become a master node? I would say no.
Become a master node? Or
as in, I guess, would implement master nodes.
Yeah, no. I mean, there are multiple reasons why that's a not very good idea, but first and foremost, it sort of defeats the whole, I would say, the unique selling point of Vertcoin, really. It's almost introducing centralization by design. Yeah.
I think, and with us, that's counter to what we stand for, is complete decentralization in every aspect of the project. And, this talk highlights the decentralization of mining, because now we have both competitors, both GPUs in the space being able to mine. Let's see. Anything else, guys? Ask a question away. If you're watching on Twitch, we are also simulcasting this on Twitch. So twitch.tv/Vertcoin Talk. I do not see the questions there. Let me jump over there real quick just to make sure that see if we have any questions. But if you want to have your questions show up in the chat on the broadcast, you do have to do that on the YouTube channel. So let's see. Looks like we don't have any questions over on the Twitch. So with that, James, I want to thank you for joining me today for this Vertcoin Talk. And if you guys have any questions about the AMD Miner, shoot into our Discord, ping one of our developers. They're always willing to talk and to help you out. But if you guys want James to come back on for another Vertcoin Talk, let us know, and then we'll try and get him back for another one. So James, thank you very much for being on today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, and we will see you guys in the next episode.